Lock Nation, how's it going? It is so good to see you, but first off, fist bump for coming back. Like, I'm so glad you came back because honestly, I'm excited about today's video, and as you can tell from the thumbnail or the title, we're gonna be talking about the M word. You know, the M word is great, and I just need to dispel a few things right now. We're not talking about marriage. This isn't a dating or relationship channel, but if you need some dating or relationship advice, I probably have a few tips and tricks that I can give you, like off screen, maybe like in another video. Or anyway, that's besides the point. So we're gonna be talking about manual mode. Now you're probably thinking in your mind, like, manual mode, okay, you kind of alluded to this last time. Is it like when you're driving a manual stick shift and you're driving? That's not what I'm talking about. Now, I mean, I drive a manual stick shift and it's great. I feel like I'm in the Fast and Furious every time I shift. You know, you gotta get that win, yeah! But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about manual mode in photography. And as most cameras, well, I should say most, what I mean by most, I mean SLRs and DSLRs, they all have this little M right here, and that stands for manual mode. Now, manual mode is great, but honestly, let's look at the definitions again. I have to preface this. I googled it because I thought in my mind, like, I could give my community my personal take on what manual mode is, but I don't want to lead you guys, the Lock Nation, which is the best community on the YouTube platform, by the way. I didn't want to lead you guys astray. So I googled it. I did it. Don't hate. But let me share my screen real quick because I googled it. So this comes from Adobe's website, and it says, what is manual mode in photography? Manual mode means you are in charge of adjusting aperture. One of photography's most important elements, which is so true. Aperture is essential when it comes to photography. It's the hole in the back of your lens that controls the light and depth of field via F numbers, or as I call them, F stops. If you want more exposure, you need to have a low F number, or again, F stops, for a wide aperture. Now you're probably thinking in your mind, like, that's a lot of complicated stuff, because, like, I mean, I know that if I was a newbie and I was coming into this and I heard this definition, I'd say, okay, that just went right over my head, just pew! But I thought about that. I thought about you guys in mind. I had you guys in mind when I was doing this, and I thought they need a more simplified version or definition of what manual mode is. So again, I googled it, and so this is what Google gave me. Manual mode requires the photographer to make the decisions that determine an image's exposure, as opposed to an automatic or semi-automatic mode that makes at least some of the calls in photography. Manual exposure, gives the maximum amount of control to the photographer. Now, if you guys know me, I want to bring this full circle real quickly. You guys remember in the last video when I talked about manual mode, like, it lets you be in control of everything? You know, I guess you could say that you are shifting those gears in that car. So I had a bubble come up, so I apologize. But you have full control when it comes to this. Manual mode is great, and you know, if this is my camera, as you guys know. So right here, you can see that I have it set in manual mode. I have my settings. I have f5.6 for the f-stops, and then I have ISO at 100, which I could easily change both those. Like, that's just an easy fix. I can change those at any time I want. And when it comes to, like, you know, if I'm out in weather, I have it set it for like cloudy right now, but I could easily change it to sunny, to nighttime, to inside. And that's one more other thing I need to point out to you guys is that it's also in RAW, because in RAW, every manual mode photo is in RAW. Every manual shot you're gonna be shooting in RAW. And you know, if you have any clients that they come up to me like, hey, can I have some of the RAW shots? Just politely tell them no, and help them to I can't get the words out of my mouth. Help them to understand that they just need to be happy with the edited shots and not the RAW shots. But honestly, there's 3 things I want you guys to take from this right now. But before I do that, let's go back to those definitions, because honestly, the more advanced definition, it brings up a few things I want to talk about real quickly. And that is, let me share my screen, obviously. Noob mistake. All right, so one thing I wanted to talk about is how it adjusts the aperture. But the one thing I wanted to bring to you guys' attention is that if you want more exposure for an f-stop, you'll want a wider aperture. You know, this is because it controls that depth of field. If I can highlight it, there we go. You know, this is such an essential part about being a photographer. And what I mean by that is, like, especially if you're taking waterfall shots, for example, which is actually going to be something I'm going to be teaching you guys in an upcoming series, where I teach you guys how to get those milky, crispy, creamy looking waterfall shots. You want to have a lower f-stop, because honestly, when it comes down to it, like, that's what's going to get you that really drippy, crispy, not drippy, crispy, drippy, creamy looking waterfall shots like this one I did right here a couple years ago. It was more than a couple years ago, 2019, but I still caught it a couple years ago. Again, it's like right here. But really, the three things that I want you guys to remember, because this is the part one of a two-part series, because there's a lot to talk about in manual mode. The three things I want you guys to remember about this is that manual mode is amazing, and then the three terms would be ISO, f-stops, and aperture. You know, do some research on that stuff so you can be more ready for the more advanced part 2 that's going to be coming next week. But, you know, think of this as like the Triforce. If you've ever seen, if you know Zelda, you know what the Triforce is. Think of this as the Triforce. You know, you got the aperture, you got the ISO, and you got the f-stops. This is, to me, the Triforce. There's so many different Triforces in photography, but if you got value out of this, then make sure you check out this video right here, where I go through with you and I do the versus the 18 to 55 millimeter lens versus the nifty 50 lens, and why either one could work in either circumstances. So I will see you over there, and get ready for part 2 next week in a more advanced version of this video.